All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep, deep into the world of JoJo Siwa.
Oh, yeah.
We are going way beyond just those, like, clickbaity headlines about her rebrand.
Right.
You guys sent us a ton of stuff, some YouTube commentary, some serious investigative journalism.
Yeah.
And today we're going to try to figure out, like, what is the full story here, you know?
For sure.
Because there are some, like, pretty serious allegations that honestly, the mainstream media just seems to be, like, totally ignoring.
It's pretty fascinating, actually, because this whole situation really makes you think about, like, what exploitation in the entertainment industry even means.
Totally.
Is it just about the money, or is there something, like, deeper going on emotionally?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And, like, that's what we're going to try to figure out today.
Absolutely.
So, as I'm sure most of you guys know, JoJo Siwa, she became super famous on Dance Moms, right?
Yep.
And now she's basically like a full-blown teen idol. But I don't know if you guys have heard about this. Her recent, like, rebrand has kind of coincided with some pretty troubling accusations from some former members of XOMG Pop.
Yeah.
Do you remember that band?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That was the one that was formed on her show, Siwa's Dance Pop Revolution.
Yeah, and those allegations, they're mainly coming from a former member, Leigha Sanderson, and her mom, Angie. They're pretty intense.
Oh, right.
Like, they paint a really different picture than the, you know, happy-go-lucky image that we usually associate with JoJo and her mom, Jessalyn.
Totally. And it's not just, like, vague complaints either.
No.
They're describing, like, a really toxic environment where these young girls were being pushed to their physical and mental limits.
Right.
There were even claims that some of them were, like, pushed so hard that they were having trouble breathing.
Yeah, it's really disturbing.
And Leigha, who actually has spina bifida, she reportedly even started bleeding from her belly button.
Oh, my God.
Because of the, like, intense physical demands of the show.
Yeah.
And I mean, that level of physical strain on someone that young, especially given, you know, her pre-existing condition, it's really concerning.
Extremely.
It makes you wonder about the long-term effects that all of that's going to have on them physically and emotionally.
Absolutely.
It's kind of crazy, too, because Angie actually hesitated to speak out at first.
Really?
Yeah, because she was worried about, like, jeopardizing Leah's big break.
Oh, wow.
Which is a real reminder of, like, the power dynamics at play here.
Oh, absolutely. Like, that's a tough spot for a parent to be in, right? You want what's best for your kid, obviously, but you're also terrified about the repercussions of speaking out against, you know, some of these really powerful people in the industry.
Right. And it's also important to remember that, like, JoJo and Jessalyn, they deny all these allegations.
Yeah.
But their legal team's response has been, like, really vague.
Interesting.
Which honestly just raises even more questions.
It does, yeah.
And what's, like, even more interesting is how this whole situation, it kind of mirrors JoJo's own experience on Dance Moms with Abby Lee Miller.
Oh, totally.
Which, I mean, Abby Lee Miller has been accused of emotional abuse and manipulation by so many former dancers.
Right.
But, like, the thing that's so weird is that JoJo has always defended Abby Lee Miller.
She has, yeah.
Like, she's literally said stuff like, I'm one of the few people who really, truly thanks Abby and is grateful for what she's done for us.
Wow.
So it's like, what's going on there?
It's strange.
You know? It's just so bizarre that she's defending Abby Lee Miller given all this other stuff.
Right.
It makes you wonder, do you think it's possible that because JoJo grew up in that kind of high-pressure environment, she's, like, normalized this behavior?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I mean, if that behavior was presented to as, like, this is just how things are, this is how you succeed,
Right.
maybe it's tough to see how damaging it can be.
Yeah.
It's almost like the glitz and glamour, they kind of mask the potential for abuse.
It's really messed up.
It is.
And you can't help but think about the timing of everything, too, right?
Oh,
like, JoJo's whole rebrand, it was such a drastic shift.
Dude,
Like, all of a sudden, she was going for this, like, edgy persona.
Totally different.
And all of that happened right when these accusations were starting to come out.
Yeah, it does make you wonder if the rebrand was maybe part of some kind of, like, PR strategy.
Right.
To, you know, try to shift the focus away from these potentially damaging accusations.
Yeah, to distraction.
Exactly, because, you know, controversy sells.
Absolutely.
And a carefully planned rebrand, that could totally overshadow any negative press.
Right. But then, you know, there's the other side of it, too.
Yeah.
Like, maybe she really did just feel like she needed to break away from that, like, child star image.
All right.
You know?
That's true.
And she has said some things that kind of hint at it being like a calculated move.
Really?
Yeah, like in one interview, she literally said, quote, "I knew what was going to get attention. I knew what was going to make people talk."
Wow.
So it's like she's definitely aware of how she's being perceived. It's like hard to tell what's genuine and what's just like her playing the game.
It really blurs the line between like authentic self-expression and just straight up image manipulation.
Totally.
And that makes the whole thing even more complicated.
Right. It's like she's playing a character, but the stakes are so high.
They are.
Because there are real people and their actual experiences that are, like, getting lost in all of this.
Yeah, that's true.
And the media's coverage of JoJo Siwa, it's so frustrating.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's like, instead of actually, you know, investigating these really serious allegations, they're just obsessed with the surface level.
It's the classic media, right?
I know.
Always focusing on what gets the most clicks and views.
Totally.
JoJo's cringe factor, her shocking transformation, that stuff's way more attention-grabbing than a nuanced discussion of, you know, potential exploitation in Hollywood.
Exactly. Like, we're talking headlines like JoJo Siwa's transformation from Bose to bold instead of former dancer's alleged abuse on JoJo Siwa's show. It's all about the superficial stuff, and the more troubling parts of the story just get, like, completely ignored.
It's like they just disappear.
And it makes you wonder, right? Are we, as viewers, like, part of the problem?
It's a good question.
Because by clicking on those, you know, sensational headlines, are we contributing to these important stories getting buried?
It's something we all need to think about. Like, are we so caught up in the, you know, shiny rebranded surface that we're missing the potential darkness underneath?
Totally.
Like, what does that say about us?
Oh, man, that's deep.
It is.
And speaking of contradictions, there's this whole other layer that we need to unpack, which is JoJo's participation in Demi Lovato's documentary.
Oh, right.
Child Star.
Yeah.
Which is literally all about criticizing the exploitation of children in the entertainment industry.
Oh, the irony.
I know, right?
It's wild.
It's, like, so bizarre.
Yeah.
Here she is in a documentary that's condemning the exact things that she's being accused of.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. In the documentary, it goes into, like, all the trauma that child stars face.
Yeah.
And some of the criticisms in it are so similar to the allegations against JoJo's show.
Really?
Yeah. It's really weird.
Wow.
And, like, in the documentary, JoJo talks about the contracts that young performers have to sign. And how they often, like, lose their rights and their earnings.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's the same stuff that Leigha and Angie are accusing her of.
It's strange. Like,
she's like, it's so parallel. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And she even criticizes the way the industry pushes young performers to their absolute limits.
What does she say?
She literally says, quote, "It's not healthy."
Oh, wow.
But then on her own show, it seems like they were doing the same thing.
That's so contradictory.
I know, right? Like, remember Jessalyn allegedly told Leigha, quote, "If you get tired, you push harder."
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah.
That's intense.
Which is, like, the opposite of what JoJo's saying in the documentary.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher, for sure.
It's, like, so confusing. Like, does being in that documentary make everything she said invalid?
Right.
Or does it just, like, show how deeply ingrained this exploitative system is?
It's tough to say.
Like, maybe even people who have been victims can end up becoming perpetrators.
Yeah.
It's so messy.
It is.
And the fact that the media is just focused on the superficial stuff, it makes it even harder to figure out the truth.
Absolutely.
But it really makes you think, what responsibility does the media have to report on these kinds of stories?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Even when it could be bad for, like, really powerful people.
It's something we should all be thinking about.
Definitely.
And not just the media, but us too, right?
You mean, like, the viewers?
Yeah, like we need to be more aware of what we're watching.
Totally.
And more critical of the information that we're consuming.
Absolutely.
We can't just accept the stories we're given.
Right.
We have to dig deeper.
For sure.
There's always more to the story than what we see on the surface.
I completely agree.
Welcome back, everybody.
So last time we were talking about, like, how the media has been kind of silent about all the accusations against JoJo. And it's actually, like, really disturbing how it seems like the public has kind of just moved on. Like, everyone's caught up in the whole rebrand thing.
They are.
And it's like we've all forgotten about these serious accusations.
Yeah, it's like a collective amnesia almost.
Totally.
But, you know, while the media might be focusing on other things, Leigha and Angie, they haven't exactly stayed quiet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've actually been pretty vocal.
About this whole thing?
Yeah, like trying to raise awareness.
Wow.
Like they've been going live on Instagram and sharing even more details.
About what happened on the show?
Exactly.
That's intense.
And some of the stuff they're saying is, like, pretty messed up.
Like what?
Well, for example, they allege that the dancers were constantly being told to create social media content.
Oh, wow.
Promoting the show, promoting the band.
So basically working as, like, unpaid influencers.
Pretty much.
Wow, that's messed up.
It is, and it's a perfect example of how social media can be, like, a weapon.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about young people.
Right.
Like, these girls were essentially working without getting paid.
Oh, wow.
All while dealing with this, you know, potentially toxic environment.
And possible financial exploitation, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just another reminder of, like, the crazy power imbalances in the industry.
It's really unfair.
It is. And Angie actually said that, like, to make ends meet, she and Bella's mom, they started working for Jessalyn directly.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Like, they basically became personal assistants.
All their daughters were on the show.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. And it makes you think, imagine being stuck in a system where you know your kid's being taken advantage of.
Yeah, that would be awful.
It would be. And they were allegedly threatened with legal action if they tried to leave or, you know, speak out about anything.
Oh, my God. Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's so messed up.
It is. It's heartbreaking.
They were literally living on air mattresses in a dance studio.
Wow.
Too scared to say anything.
Yeah, because they were afraid of losing everything.
It's just, like, so awful.
It is.
And all of this was happening while JoJo was out there, like, praising dance moms and talking about how much she supports young talent.
Yeah, which makes the hypocrisy even more obvious.
Totally. Like, remember in the Demi Lovato documentary?
Yeah.
JoJo actually says, quote, "When I first started the team over there at Nickelodeon, they protected me against people that they needed to."
Oh, wow.
But then, like, you compare that to what was allegedly going on her own show.
Right.
It's like, did she even understand the negative side of the industry?
It makes you question if she's just totally oblivious.
Right. Or worse, like, maybe she's choosing to ignore it.
Yeah, maybe she's just trying to protect herself.
It's possible.
It is. And, you know, it's interesting. Even though the media might not be, like, directly talking about the allegations,
Yeah.
their silence is kind of deafening.
That's true. It's like they're protecting her by not saying anything.
Exactly. They're focused on all the, you know, fun, exciting stuff.
Right.
But that just lets the public forget about these serious accusations.
And that's a problem.
It is, and it brings up a really important question. Like, do they even have a responsibility to report on these kinds of stories?
Even when it could hurt someone powerful.
Exactly.
It's tough. Like, where do you draw the line?
It is, and it's not just about them. It's about us, too.
The viewers.
Yeah, like, what can we do to be more critical of what we're watching?
That's a really good question.
Like, how do we stop just accepting the story that we're given?
And demand more transparency.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's important.
Okay, so we've talked about the media, we've talked about the allegations, but we can't forget about JoJo's relationship with Abby Lee Miller. Like, especially in light of all this other stuff.
Yeah.
It's just weird, right?
It is.
Like, she's still so close to her.
Yeah, it's like she's holding on to this symbol of the system that she's being accused of perpetuating.
Exactly, and she's always defending her.
She is, despite everything.
It's just, like, so strange.
It is. And remember that podcast interview she did recently?
Yeah.
Where she's, like, gushing about Abby Lee Miller's influence on her.
Oh, yeah, and how she still uses all the techniques she learned on Dance Moms.
Exactly, and that makes you think, like, has she internalized all that stuff?
Even the stuff that could be harmful.
Yeah, like, maybe she sees it as the key to her success.
It's a scary thought.
It is. And you know what else is interesting about that interview?
What?
Both JoJo and Abby Lee Miller, they basically went after the former Dance Mom stars who spoke out against the show.
They did. What did they say?
They basically implied that the people who stayed silent, they're the ones who made it.
Wow.
Like, being obedient and quiet, that's what gets you rewarded.
And speaking out gets you nowhere.
Exactly. Which is a pretty messed up message.
It is. It's like they're saying, if you want to succeed, you keep your mouth shut.
Even when you see things that are wrong.
That's messed up.
It is. And, you know, speaking of things that are wrong, the leaked schedule from Siwa's Dance Pop Revolution,
Yeah.
that tells you a lot about what was going on.
Ah, what does it say?
Well, basically, those girls were working like crazy.
Really?
Like 12-hour days, rehearsals, performances, media appearances.
Wow.
Not a lot of time for rest or anything.
That's insane, especially for teenagers.
It is,
Yeah.
and you can only imagine the toll that takes.
Physically and emotionally.
Exactly, and it's so different from what JoJo was talking about in Child Star.
Right, she was all about how bad it is to overwork young performers.
And then her show's doing the exact same thing.
It's just, like, so hypocritical.
It is, and it makes you wonder, like, is she really trying to change things?
Or is she just playing the game?
It's hard to say.
This is getting really complicated.
It is, but there's still more to uncover. Like, what are the long-term consequences of all of this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
For JoJo's career?
Yeah.
For the industry as a whole?
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We will?
Welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. This whole JoJo Siwa thing.
It's a lot.
It is!
It's a lot to unpack.
So much. Like, I feel like we've gone from rebrands to these serious allegations to, like, talking about the media's role in all of it.
Yeah.
So now I think we need to kind of, like, zoom out a little and talk about what this means, like, in the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you look back at everything we've talked about, there's this pattern that keeps coming up,
Yeah.
And it seems like JoJo is, like, really good at controlling how people see her.
Totally. Like, whether it's through those cryptic social media posts or, appearing in these documentaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, she's a master at shaping the narrative.
She is, and that makes you think, like, what are her real intentions?
Right.
Is she genuinely trying to, like, bring attention to these important issues in the industry?
Yeah.
Or is she just, protecting her brand?
That's a really good question.
And honestly, some of her actions don't really make it easy to believe her.
Right. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, she's still defending Abby Lee Miller.
Oh, right.
Even though, like, so many people have accused her of all this horrible stuff.
It is kind of weird.
And then all those, like, contradictory statements she makes.
Yeah.
It's just not a good look.
It's not. And I think we also have to acknowledge the media's part in all of this.
For sure.
Because by focusing on, like, the superficial stuff and ignoring those serious accusations, they've basically helped JoJo avoid any real scrutiny.
Yeah, and I think that just highlights a bigger problem,
What do you mean?
Like, the media, they're so obsessed with entertainment.
Yeah.
They often forget about holding people accountable.
Especially when it's someone as powerful as JoJo. It's frustrating, but it also makes me wonder, like, what can we even do as viewers?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Like, how do we stop just passively accepting whatever the media tells us?
Right. We need to be more critical.
With everything.
Yeah, like, question the motives behind the stories we see.
And, like, actually look for different perspectives.
That's a good point.
And I think it's also important to call out hypocrisy when you see it.
Oh, for sure.
Whether it's a celebrity saying one thing and doing another, or, like, a media outlet that's just trying to get clicks.
Exactly. Because staying silent just lets these patterns continue.
And that's not okay.
It's not. And I think, honestly, JoJo Siwa's story is kind of a cautionary tale.
What do you mean?
Well, it shows how the entertainment industry can really prioritize profit over people.
Especially young performers.
Exactly. And it highlights, like, all the manipulation and power dynamics.
And how the line between victim and abuser can get really blurry.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It definitely makes you think about, like, ambition and exploitation.
Right.
And what some people are willing to do for fame.
And I think it's important to remember the people who spoke out.
Yeah, like Leigha and her mom.
They were incredibly brave.
They were.
To share their story.
And it's a reminder that there's always more to the story.
Always.
Than what we see on the surface.
Yeah, I wonder what JoJo's legacy will be.
That's a good question. Like, will she be remembered as, like, a business genius?
Right.
Who knew how to control her image?
Yeah, or as someone who, hurt people on her way to the top.
It's hard to say.
It is.
I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, but I think this whole deep dive has shown us that we need to be more aware.
As viewers.
Yeah, like, we need to be critical, we need to ask questions.
And we can't be afraid to demand better from the entertainment industry.
Absolutely, and we need to support those who are brave enough to speak out.
Absolutely.
Because this case really just points to a much bigger issue.
Yeah. What's that?
The exploitation that happens all the time in Hollywood.
It's easy to just focus on the people who become famous.
Right.
And forget about everyone who gets hurt along the way.
Exactly. And that's something to think about.
Definitely.
As we watch movies, as we listen to music.
As we support these entertainers.
Exactly.
Well, that was a lot.
It was.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of JoJo Siwa.
It was my pleasure.
Hopefully this conversation will, like, encourage all of you to be more critical of the media you consume and to remember that, like, every story has layers.
Oh, for sure.
Some of them are pretty dark.
Yeah.
So keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.